Okay, so we'll just begin and I'll screen share.
Okay.
Okay. Screen share. Right. And you did the homework. Right. We'll just look at your homework first. And I've drawn out the RSD in another document, another kind of version, and we'll discuss both, and then we'll move on and discuss how to do elicitation questions for vocabulary. You asked to do that. So this is your text. Hang on, how do I move it down? Hang on a sec, here we go. Right. So we won't read it again because I think you know it pretty well now. Okay. Oh, where's your diagram gone?
At the bottom.
At the bottom. All right.
Yeah. This
Okay.
is my diagram.
Okay. So we'll look at the diagram first, and then we'll look at the questions that you set to try to elicit the diagram. Okay.
Okay.
Right. So RSD as basis of elicitation questions. So would you give this diagram and then ask the elicitation questions, or would you ask the elicitation questions first and then draw the diagram with the students? How would you do it?
I think I'll start with draw
Right.
background.
I would start.
I would start.
Right.
Start with I will draw the background by myself first. And then I will also draw board.
So you draw the background and this, maybe with a box on the board, okay?
And then I will draw a board and a game. And ask them what made the game result in.
What made what?
What made the game result in?
What did the game result in?
And so students will answer me. Students' answer is broken window. And then I write student answer, broken window on the backboard. You
write it here on the diagram?
Yes.
And then you ask?
And then I ask students a question. After the boys broke the window, what made the woman's reaction?
What was the woman's reaction? So she smiled?
Yes. I write my questions below the diagram. Here.
So what may the game result in? The broken window. Okay. And then after the boys broke the window, what may the woman's reaction be? How about your tense here? Broke is past tense.
Yes.
Right? And this is kind of subjunctive, right? But about the future of this. Okay, do you put this in the past tense? Past tense? Look here. What may the game result in? This is all hypothetical.
Because I want students to predict the following.
Exactly. So you could even write that prediction story, prediction questions. Yeah. Okay, and you can use this word in the lesson, prediction, because the examiners will want to know that you're aware of this idea of the students being able to predict from the title and also from the introduction to the story. Okay, so what may the result, or what might, may or might, now the game result in? Broken window. After the boys the window broke, it would be what was the woman's reaction if it's broke? This is hypothetical. It's not real. It didn't happen yet. It hasn't happened yet. They're just predicting it. So you don't say broke, you say this after is in the future, really. Because this is before they read the story. They're predicting what's going to happen in the story in the future when they read it. So you can't put past here. What should it be?
Had broken.
Okay, have broken. Have broken. That's okay. Present perfect. Or break the window. After the boys break. Or have broken the window. Right? What may, I think might is generally, it sounds more natural here. What might the woman's reaction be? The English that surrounds me, may isn't used all that much. Okay, there's nothing wrong with it, but what may the woman's reaction be? What might the woman's reaction be? The woman not smiled. Have they read the story? They haven't read the story yet, right? So they don't know that she smiled, do they?
They don't know.
They don't know, right? Do they think she might smile?
I think students will say the woman will be angry.
Right. Yeah. Students, probable answer, the woman will be angry. Okay. I don't think they'll guess that she smiled. Will be angry. That's most people's reaction, isn't it? If they get their, if somebody breaks their window deliberately, the natural reaction for most people is to be angry. Right? So we don't know she's going to smile. Right? How can you elicit this idea of smile not being angry? I don't think they'll guess that she smiles. That's just her expression of her feelings, but it's later. But what's her reaction when they break the window? Now, the woman will be angry. Actually, she's not. You can ask them for an alternative, or, we don't know, could she have another reaction? You could ask her. You could ask. So the question is, could she perhaps have another or a different reaction? Okay, you could ask that. And what might the answer? maybe they won't answer, maybe they don't know. So if they don't answer, you could have another elicitation question, put it as EQ. Another elicitation question, which might be, how could you elicit from them this idea of not being angry? Now, all they've read is the title and the start of the story, the background, basically. Right? They've just read the title and the background. How can you elicit from them that she wasn't angry? What do you think? Let's look at the text, okay? You can always look back at the text. They've read, we'll put this in brackets because we discussed, this is just our discussion for last week, isn't it, from last week. They've only read this part, the title, a lesson in forgiveness, and this part. Right, that's all they know. Now, based on this, how can you elicit from them that actually she wasn't angry? It's quite the opposite. Just from this part, read it. Which
I'll
part?
ask them to look at the title, forgiveness.
Exactly. Very good. And this helps them to realize that the title is very important in predicting the story. And of course, as a reader in predicting, but also as a writer in structuring your story. You have to connect it to the title. So the story is about forgiveness, right? Why don't we do not start by asking them a lesson in forgiveness? No, I suppose that's a bit abstract. You could have them read this first, read the title, read the background, tell them this is just the background as you did, you draw it on the board, and then ask them what the rest of the story will be. Good. Okay. So let's go back to your questions. What may the woman's reaction be? Or could you perhaps a different reaction? And if there's no answer, okay, if you get no answer, the students don't know, okay, then you can ask another question. How would you phrase it? Or guide them towards the... Would you ask them, get them to look at the title?
Does
Does the title
does the forgiveness have something to do with woman? Is there a relationship between forgiveness and the woman?
Okay, you haven't directed them to the title though. You have to mention the title. You have to get them to look at the title. And you can use this word title because it makes them aware that the title is important. So I would actually have the word title in my question. Or you could just direct them to the title to find an alternative reaction. So it's the title, perhaps provide what? So the question is, could she perhaps have a different reaction? That is, could she perhaps not be angry? Does the title perhaps provide what? Maybe a clue? A clue to what?
The woman's reaction.
Yeah. You could ask that, couldn't you? And mention the title, draw their attention to the title. Because many readers forget the title. They don't really see it as important, but it's very, very important. Basically, it tells you what the story, the basic meaning or message in the story is, right? So, and what might the student's answer be?
The woman forgave the boy.
The woman forgave the boy. Okay. You could say perhaps the woman forgave the boy. Exactly. Yeah. And you've got the idea of forgiveness here from the title. Good. So they've got this possibility. Perhaps she'll be angry, or perhaps she'll forgive him. They don't know. But it's good for them to have this kind of, these alternatives in their mind, and they've got questions that the text can answer. This helps them to understand the text better if they can predict possible outcomes. Now, the smile, but you haven't kind of introduced them to the smile yet, okay? So they've only read the background. So maybe part B, what do you instruct them to do? So part A, students read the background, right? Read the background. This is your instruction to them, right? And you put it on the board, the diagram on the board. Now, what do they have to do? You tell them to read what part? Sorry. What do you tell them to read? Which part comes next? You ask about the smile.
Paragraph 3.
So you miss paragraph 2. You don't do anything about, well, the rest of it. Paragraph 2 you miss. You miss this part also, and you miss paragraph 2. Yeah, and you jump to paragraph 3. Is that okay? Shouldn't you ask something about this to elicit this part? What does this part do?
The boy broke the window.
Exactly. So what question can you ask? So, right. So here they have to read the background. Right. Now tell them to read what? You really want to jump to the smile? Paragraph 3? I don't think so. So part B, what should they read? Read how much and why?
But the question 1, the answer is broken window.
Yes. Okay. So the answer is broken window. So what can you now ask them to do? Read what part to find out what? Read what part in relation to the broken window in question 1. What can you ask students to do?
After they answer broken window, I will ask them to read paragraph 2 to check whether the first answer to the question is correct.
Right. Let's see if that works. Okay. Broken window. Yeah, that could work. So A, read background, then B, read the rest of C1 and the question. And your question is, was your prediction correct? Did the boys break the window? Yeah? Does that work? So
read the end of paragraph 1. But I think they can also read paragraph 2.
Oh, you want them to read that also? Read to the end of 2. Okay. So, yeah, you could get them to read a bit more. And answer following questions. You could do that. Yeah. Okay. Was your prediction correct? Did the boys break the window? And also, what would you have them answer? And this one, after the boys have broken the window, broke or have broken the window, What may or might the woman's reaction be? Is this question okay after the boys have broken the window? Do we want to tell them before they've read it, the boys do break the window? Or do we want them to find this out when they read it? Have broken is better.
Did the boy break the window? And the students say yes.
Mm-hmm.
So they have already confirmed.
Yep.
The broken window.
So the answer is yes. Student answer, yes. But you ask this question before they give the answer, this one. Do they read to the end so that they know that the boys have broken? Here you're telling them, with this question, you're telling them that the boys have broken the window before they read it. You're saying, did the boys break the window? After the boys have broken the window, what might the woman's reaction be? Here, you're saying the boys did break the window. It would be better to say if the boys. Keep it hypothetical because they haven't read it yet. If the boys break the window, right? And then you get them to answer later. You get them to answer later. You get student answer 1, yes, and student answer 2, the woman will be angry, or you elicit this. Could she perhaps have another different reaction if they don't answer? And does the title provide a clue to the woman's reaction? Right? And perhaps the woman, you could say, forgives, because it hasn't happened yet. Forgave is okay because you're thinking of it as a story. You can talk in the past or present. But here, really, you haven't read it yet, so it's anticipation. Oh, perhaps she forgives them, or forgives him. Okay? The boy or the boys. You don't know. Before you've read it, you don't know if one boy does it or other boys. If she forgives one, or if she forgives them all.
I don't understand why we use present tense forgives.
Right. Because it's a story. Right? And a story can be told in the past tense, what happened in the story after you read it, after you've read it, what happened in it. Or you can see the story as something permanent that still exists now. And you can tell the story in the present tense. And using the present tense for a story makes it more alive. It makes it relevant to now and not just something that happened in the past and is finished, but it's something that's now. So you can, the same with a movie, you can talk about what happens in a movie. You know, if you're telling somebody about a movie that you've seen, you can say what happened in it, but that's not so natural as saying what happens in it. You know, and then because it makes it more exciting. for storytelling. So this is grammar for storytelling, either past tense or present tense. Here, your students haven't read the story yet, and they're just guessing about the future. And present tense here is present tense for storytelling, but it's also present tense for the future. Because remember, we've already talked about how you can use the present tense for future reference as well. Perhaps she forgives him in the story in the future. You understand that?
Yeah.
If you use the past tense, it means that the students have read the story already.
Okay.
But they haven't yet. It's prediction. Right? It's prediction. So it's much better. Forgives. You could also say will forgive. That's okay too. Right? You can use will forgive. Perhaps she'll forgive the boys. Or perhaps a woman forgives the boys. This is just speculation, guessing about the future. And because it's about the future, or it's about a story, they haven't read it yet. Because they haven't read it yet, you cannot use the past tense. Sounds a bit odd.
How about may and might?
Yeah. Perhaps the women refer. You want to use may? Rewrite this. Rewrite the sentence using may or might. How will you do that?
Just perhaps the woman might forgive the boys. Right,
there's a problem with that. Perhaps the woman might. What's the problem with that? Perhaps.
Oh, perhaps and might cannot.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So we don't. Yeah. So we don't want perhaps here, right? We've got that one already. You want to use may or might. So the woman. Continue.
The woman might forgive the boys.
Yeah. Forgive the boys. Or may. May forgive the boys, might forgive the boys. What's the difference?
So may and might here is subjunctive.
Yeah.
Here.
Yeah, it's sort of unreal situation. Express kind of speculation. It's not yet real. And what's the difference between using may and using might?
If you are confident about your answer, you think the possibility is higher, you will use may.
Yes.
If your possibility is lower, you will use might.
Yeah. So may indicates higher possibility. May, that's right, exactly. Good. May indicates higher possibility of this happening than might. Exactly. Okay, good. Now, so perhaps the woman, she may forgive the boys, right? Okay, and now, will you have them read more? So next, read paragraph 3. Will you do it paragraph by paragraph? So, yeah.
I'll ask them to read paragraph 3 to check the woman's reaction.
Okay. It's the woman's reaction.
The lady greeted me with a smile.
Yeah. Why miss this part? Why miss this part? Is this not important for the development of the story?
I think smile means kindness.
Yeah. Yeah.
And this kindness result in change in boy's feelings.
Yes. But you're talking about a change in the boy's feelings. But is this not relevant to the change in the boy's feelings? The fact that initially he was just afraid of getting caught. He was being selfish. He didn't think of the woman's feelings at all. Is that not important to mention?
From worry to guilty.
Yeah. Yeah. So do you think it might be important now to mention that his reaction just didn't care?
Yeah.
I think maybe you need to have them guess his reaction as well, and also ask them, were you correct? Was the woman angry? And also, the lady greeted me with a smile. Does she know who broke the window? Why does she smile? Would you ask that?
Yeah.
And then this part, he no longer felt his reaction to her smile. So here is a change. Didn't think about her, and then he started to feel uncomfortable. So it's from this to this because of this. Yeah. Right. So what questions could you ask about paragraph 3 then? You want to pick up on this idea of, was the woman angry? Do we know, what's her reaction? And also maybe the boy's reaction. So what would you ask?
What might the boy feel if
yeah, or how might the boy feel? How? Okay, read P3 and answer the following questions. Okay, 1, how might the boy feel about what? About what?
his behavior or
his behavior, or about his having broken the window.
Yeah.
You can be more specific or just say his behavior. And student answers might be, how might, so this is EQ1. And what would the student's answer possibly be?
He might feel worried about getting caught.
Yeah, he might feel worried about getting caught. And you could ask any other possibilities. EQ2. Any other possible reactions from the boy? You could ask that to encourage people to think a bit more. And maybe yes, maybe no. Okay. Some might say guilty. Might feel, might not. It doesn't matter. You don't have to elicit the correct, and you don't have to elicit the correct answer or different answers, but try to get them to think of different possibilities and not just one. And you could ask them how many feel that he'd be worried about getting caught, how many might think he feels guilty and to put their hands up, or how many feel that he'd feel both, afraid of getting caught and also guilty. You can ask for their reactions. Okay. Right. Okay. And then if you call that 1.2 and 1.1, because that's about the boy's reaction. So this is the boy's reaction, right? And now we want to know about the woman's reaction, right? What question would you ask? From paragraph 3.
How might the woman react to
this time? Is it might? Just read it. It's not might here, is it? Sorry, not might, because, oh no, they haven't read it yet. Sorry, they haven't read P3 yet. Right, how react to what? The boy's behavior. And it's plural, right? The boys, plural or singular. It's about both, isn't it? And what answer? The student might answer. Oh, actually, how does this time? Because before you asked how might she react, and they guessed. So you could say, how does the woman react to the boy's behavior? Was your prediction correct? Right?
I have a question.
Yeah.
In the previous question, we asked students to predict. Student read the title and then guess the woman will forgive. And plus elicitation question 2. What does the woman react to the boy's behavior? Now, does these two kinds of question overlap?
Yeah. At first you asked that them to predict from the title. Now you're asking them to find out by reading. So the first one is prediction. How might she react? And now you're asking them to actually read paragraph 3 and find out how she does react.
Oh.
Okay. So the first one is really prediction, guessing. And here you're telling them to read it and to find out.
Okay.
Yeah. This is close reading, really, isn't it? This is close reading, finding out. And you're asking them, you're linking back to the prediction and asking them to find out if their prediction was correct. Was she angry, or is she angry, or does she forgive them? Yeah. What might they answer? How do you think she answers?
The woman will forgive the boy.
Woman will give the boy. We're asking them to read paragraph 3 and find out. Okay. It's not a prediction, but will forgive or forgives. You can use the present tense, forgives or will forgive the boy. And if they answer this, then you can ask another question. Is that for sure that she forgives them? Is that sure at this stage? So you could ask another elicitation question. So this is 2.1. Oh, why is that? Wait a minute. 2.1. And then you could have EQ 2.2, which would be, are you sure she has forgiven him? Perhaps you could ask that. Are we sure?
We are not sure.
Yeah, she just smiles. So what other possibility is there? You could ask, are we sure? What other possibility is there? So the answer would be no. Yeah. Basically. Yeah, so the answer is no, we're not sure. So then that leads to the next question. What other possibility is there? So what's the other possibility? That she hasn't forgiven him, she just what? What's the other possibility?
The student maybe the woman had already alert or called the police.
Oh, and she just didn't tell the boys. Okay, maybe the woman has alerted or called the police, and she's just pretending to be friendly.
Yes.
And she's just pretending to be friendly. A possibility, yeah. Or maybe, is there another possibility? You can ask them and just see what you get. And if you don't get anything else, that's fine. But you can, different students might have different ideas, and it's good for them to guess and then see if their prediction is correct. Or maybe what? Maybe she know that the boys broke the window. She knows the window is broken, but does she know who broke the window? Maybe she doesn't know that it was the boy who broke the window. Yeah? Maybe she just doesn't know. Right? Yeah. So you can try to elicit these different possibilities without telling them the answer, to get them thinking about it. And then so that they've got different options as possibilities. And then they read and they find out which is true in the story, maybe. Yeah? Yeah. Okay. We don't have that much more time, and you want to do elicitation questions for vocabulary. Would you like to go over this on your own, the rest of it? And also, I did another diagram for the, I did a possible rhetorical structure diagram for the text, right? It's not complete. I haven't put labels on, all of the labels for the rhetorical relations. It's just mainly the points in the story, right? I haven't put the relations. Realization, yeah. And we've got reaction. That's a kind of relation. Action, reaction is a kind of rhetorical relation. It's not just an event in the story, but mostly I've written in the events in the story. The background, and then the narrative reaches a crisis. You can put in, that's broken window, isn't it? The crisis is the broken window. Right. And then problem to solution, that's another level. Maybe you'd like to look at this and just think about it. You might want to lead your students up to this idea of the story, the narrative, reaching the crisis, and then there's a parallel, like a parallel development with the woman's reaction and the boy's reaction, right? And you've got the events and the reaction to the events, and the interaction of the woman's reaction and the boy's reaction. So she smiles, and that changes the fear to guilt. Actually, it should be above here, shouldn't it? These two, it should really be results in the change from fear to guilt in the boy. So maybe the arrow should go down like this to show the change. Fear to guilt. This is the cause and this is the effect. And then the guilt is the cause and this is the effect. Right? And then gave $7 is the cause, and then the woman, or action, maybe this is action, reaction, or cause effect. You can look at it in different ways. And then the woman's returning the dollars with the note leads to the boy's realization. She had known all along. He thought she didn't know, but she did. And also she had forgiven him, right? Now the known relates back to the crisis, the breaking of the window, and all of this that followed. She knew, right? But like we discussed before, the lesson, the forgiveness kind of relates to this implicitly, but the word itself isn't mentioned. It does relate to the story, but it's implied in the story. And the cohesion, this is the cohesion she had known about. The cohesion is only in the title. The cohesion only relates to the forgiveness in the title. There's nothing explicit about forgiveness here. It's only when the boy gets the note that the realization, that's where the forgiveness comes in, just here. He realizes that she had forgiven him. But there's nothing about it in the story. As we're reading it, we don't know, right? But it links to the title. Nothing at all in the text. And the lesson, it is the lesson, right? There's the lesson in the title, but where is it? I think I'll make this a double, a double arrow, right? Because if you mention something, it has to be in the story, right? It has to be in the story. But the lesson really comes with the realization, doesn't it? But it's implicit. It's only implicit, and it comes after or with the realization. The realization causes the boy to learn a lesson, right? So in a sense, there is a lesson, but it's not mentioned. We're not told what the lesson is. We have to just guess what the lesson is. Lesson could be, and you can ask the students to guess, what do you think the lesson was? Right? You ask elicitation questions. Does the writer tell us what the lesson was? No, the writer tells us a story and tells us that the boy learned a lesson, but he doesn't tell us what the lesson is. He tells us a story. He doesn't tell us the lesson. He doesn't explain it explicitly what the lesson is. And you could ask them, what is the lesson? And get them to talk about it. And you could actually get them to put a final comment, at the end, the realization, and then the conclusion. What was the lesson? Could be the conclusion, rather than just ending it here with like a cliffhanger. It's like in a kind of action film where you've got a cliffhanger, something dramatic happens at the end, but you have to wait later to find out what happens. here is a lesson. The reader has to think, what is that lesson? So a good exercise for the students would be to write out a conclusion that makes explicit what the lesson is. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, that might be useful.
Mm.
And you wanted to do some practice of right, which words would we just have time for a few words, maybe 2 or 3. Which words would you like to elicit the meaning of in the text?
Community.
Community, right. Now, a basic principle is that a word only has meaning in its specific context. It has a kind of abstract meaning, but it also has a meaning in that context, right? When I was a kid, I delivered newspapers in my community every day. Right. How would you elicit the meaning of community? First of all, you have to know what community means. What does community mean?
The place where people live.
Yeah. So, place where people live. So, vocab, elicitation questions. Okay, I'll just put it in here for community. Right. And basically it's a place where people live. A town, a city, a house.
An area.
Is it just a place or is it more than a place? So you could, elicitation question for community, you could ask, what is a community? And you might get a student answer, a place where people live. Okay. And you could say, so is a big city a community? Is a house a community? So these are places where people live. A community has more to it than just the place. What does it also involve? You could say a community is more than just a place. What does it involve? Maybe you could ask them. So what does it involve? It's not just like a house, a building. It's not just a city, an area, a place. It's more than that. What is a community? You live in a community?
Neighbors.
Yeah. So maybe student answer. Good. Neighbors. Maybe what else? The neighbors and their
Fence.
Their what?
Neighborhood fence.
Fence. Neighbors, neighborhood So it's like a neighborhood, similar. Yeah. And maybe relationships. Does it involve relationships, a community? People living together? People living together? And fighting? Does it involve fighting with people in a community? Maybe it has the idea of helping each other, being friendly. Maybe it has these connotations. These are just connotations, not specific to the meaning, but they're connected. Friendly relations, helping each other. These are connotations. They're not specific. I don't think they're specific to the meaning. We could check the meaning and find out. It's maybe a good idea for you always to check the meaning for yourself so that you get all the different nuances. So community, meaning, right? It helps. A group of people living in the same place or having a particular characteristic in common. So the focus is on people, not the place, right? So it's not the place where they live, but it's the people, right? So you focus on the idea that it's people living together. A particular area or place considered together with its inhabitants. So it has to be with the inhabitants, not just the place itself. That's important. Is that important in the story? So this place where people live, is that okay? Yeah, you mentioned people. People live there. Okay. But the focus is on the people, not just the place, but the focus. Try to get them the idea that this is important. It's not just a house. It's not just a city or a village. The focus is on the people and their interaction. They're living together. And the idea is they're generally, of course, you could have terrible communities where you just fight, but basically a community, the idea is that people live together and they try to help each other, right? Is this important for the story? The woman lived in his community.
It refers to the place.
Only to the place. It only refers to the place.
Place and the people.
Place and the people, yeah. And is this important, the idea of the people and the community living together, supporting each other, helping each other, living closely together? It's not like a big city where people don't know their neighbors. They don't know anybody. It's not like that. It's a place where people live together. Maybe you have to have the idea of together. Right? Maybe not just live, but live together. Yeah. So try to get this idea. Is that important to this story? That the woman lives in his community, that he delivers papers in the community and he broke the window of a woman and he didn't care. Is that important?
I think this provide the background.
Yeah.
Background to the story.
Yeah, it provides an aspect, the background, and it's quite important because he is going against the community's values, right? He should, normally he delivers papers, he's friendly, the woman's friendly, but he's going against this. Okay. And maybe you could ask them, students, do you live in a community? What's it like? Are your neighbors friendly? Things like that. You could maybe ask, you can personalize it, ask them about their community, and, you know, or if they live in a big city, maybe they don't really have a community. And you can talk about this notion of a community.
I think after students learn the word community,
yeah,
you live in a community, what is like? Are your neighbor friendly? I think these three questions is like, these questions are like concept checking question. After students learn this question, the teacher have to check whether students understand the meaning of the. So
whether they understand the full meaning. And personalizing it. If you personalize the vocabulary, it helps the students to remember the meaning because they can think of their situation. So personalization is an important aspect of vocabulary development and learning in general. Grammar, everything, if they can personalize it, like use the grammar, a story that has meaning to them, or use the vocabulary, you know, to talk about something that's meaningful to them, then it connects to them at a kind of more psychological and maybe emotional level. So you can remember better. I'm just going to have a sip of coffee. I talk a lot and I get very thirsty. So, yeah. So I think if you put into, you actually talk about personalization stage, that's good. Your examiners, the people, the interviewers really for a job, they will like this, that you personalize it. And you can tell them, I like to personalize the learning because it helps the students to remember, it helps them to connect psychologically and emotionally. Yeah. So
I think the first is vocabulary elicitation question.
Yeah.
And then I make an example sentence on the blackboard. Third, I ask them concept checking question to check whether the student understand. I think that's my 3-step. Correct.
Yeah, that could be good. So you give them an example on the board. What example would you give to teach community? Wouldn't you just ask more questions like, do you live in a community? What's it like? Maybe you would write down one of their responses. What do you think? I wouldn't give an example of something that's very different from the story. I would keep it personalized or directly related to the story. Don't just give an example from something that the students don't know, that's not connected with the story. I would keep it very connected and personalized. You could write about your community, for example. In my community, people are very friendly and they help each other, for example. And you could give an example. Like, for example, the community where I grew up, people were very friendly. Basically, they lived in each other's houses. People didn't lock their doors. Neighbours would just knock, open the door and come in. They wouldn't wait for us to answer the door. They just walked in. And if we didn't have any milk or sugar, we could go and ask the neighbours for milk or sugar if the shops were closed and we needed it. So that's people living in a community. So I would keep it personal. You could talk about your personal community, experience of a community, and ask them for theirs. You sometimes share your experiences with your students, or do you prefer to keep a bit private from them? Of course, you have to keep some things private, but how much of yourself you reveal to your students? A lot, a little, kind of a medium?
Yeah, I think teacher can share personal experience.
Yeah. You can share, but you have to be careful that you don't share too much. But I think students are interested, and it helps you to be more approachable and open. And if you share your experiences, perhaps that will encourage them to share theirs. But not too much, maybe, because you still have to keep a bit of a distance for discipline. So you can be very friendly and open, but you have to know also when to close. Yes? Do you have discipline problems?
No.
No. Good. Yeah. Generally, I don't, because I teach adults, but have taught in primary school. Wasn't bad, but secondary schools in Scotland, whoa, terrible discipline problems. If you were friendly, they could take advantage. So, but if you don't have discipline problems, you can open up to your students, and your students are quite mature. Yeah, they're about 17, 18 years old, quite mature. You can open up to them. Good. So is that okay for the idea of community, or is that enough to elicit?
Yeah.
You think? And try to connect the story. Also connect the story and connect to them. Personalize it as well, and show the significance of the word to the story, because normally you help people in your community, but this boy behaved badly, right? Yeah. Okay. Right. If you'd like to choose another word, sorry, that jumped. Would you like to choose another word and we can try it?
Elderly.
Elderly. Right. My friend and I were bored. As a result, we randomly picked an elderly lady's house to be part of our game of throwing stones. Okay. Now, you can't guess this from the context, can you? With community, with community also, you could ask the question, another important question is, where do paper deliverers usually deliver their papers? Maybe that would elicit it.
Yes.
Because that's understanding from context. This is understanding from the context, isn't it? You can guess understanding or guessing, because guessing is very important. You encourage your students to guess. Right? They don't need to be right, but they have to guess. That's a big factor in understanding language. Even in your native language, sometimes there are words you don't know, and you guess from the context, and you have to encourage this. I don't know if I told you, when I was learning French, I used to read a lot of books in French, and my French level was quite low, but I still read the books and I guessed the meaning. I guessed the stories. And sometimes the stories in my head were similar to the ones written. Sometimes they were different. But I was still learning the French. So you encourage them to guess and to enjoy the language, enjoy the guessing, and not to feel that they have to understand every word. They shouldn't use their dictionary all the time. What does this mean? No, they guess and they read on, and maybe they don't understand it at first, but then later, that's what that word means. Then they realize later. So they shouldn't need to know the meaning of every word. They should be quite happy with guessing, having an idea, but they don't need to know everything for reading. Yeah? Is that how they do it in your schools, or do they want students to understand everything? Generally.
I think the reading comprehension in our monthly exam, like final exam in the school, is changed into like PISA. For example, students read a paragraph and then and the picture, read the picture and the words, and then answer reading comprehension question.
Yeah. And so they're expected to know most of the words in that text. Yeah, that's for testing, of course. And maybe it's words that have been taught that they should know for their level. But for reading practice, you have to try and discourage them from trying to know the meaning of every word. Make them quite happy with knowing maybe, I don't know, I used to know maybe sometimes about 40%, and then it grew to 50, and then to 60, and then eventually to more. But when I was first reading, like I remember reading Zola, maybe I understood 30% of it. I didn't understand it all. It was very low, but I enjoyed it. But you could encourage students to maybe know about 70% and be happy with guessing. And then gradually they build up to understanding a whole text much more easily when their level develops. Okay, right, let's move on. We had moved on, but I went back to the other one, elderly. Right. How could you elicit this question? Elicit elderly. How would you, can you guess? Can you suggest anything? Elderly.
How does the woman looks like? Or
what do you think the woman looks like? Yeah, you could do it that way. What do you think the woman looks like? Can you guess? Get them to guess. Yeah. And do you think they will guess old, older?
Maybe.
Why?
Lady's house. I think.
Yeah.
The lady owned the house.
Yeah.
She buy the house.
She bought the house. She has a house, but maybe young people. Maybe she doesn't own it. Maybe she's just renting it. Lady's house. No, maybe not. But yeah, you could look at the word itself, ELD. If they don't know, you could say the word begins with ELD. What does that remind you of? Or what word does that remind you of? Eld. Or what does it sound like? Eld. Do you think they would answer, they would know from that?
Oh.
You think? Eld? Do you think they would guess from that? No? No? Elderly? Old? It's very similar. I think the root is probably the same as old, elderly.
Is eld, does, I'm not sure about one thing. Does eld refer to prefix?
It's not exactly a prefix. The prefix is before another word, like precondition. Condition is a word and it has a prefix before it. This is actually part of the word elderly, part of the adjective. It's like older, elder, older. Right? It sounds like, right? What does it sound like? So they can guess from that, right? And you can guess old, young. Later, we don't know, do we, how old she is? We don't know, but maybe this is typical. It's typical. It's quite typical to have an older woman in a story like this. Don't you think?
Yeah.
It's quite typical. So it's kind of part of the genre. It's a question of genre, maybe. This type of story often has the vulnerable old lady. They have a vulnerable. So she's vulnerable. If she's older, she's more vulnerable. So this makes the story worse. It makes the boy's behavior much worse. If it were a young woman who's strong and could fight back, his behavior isn't quite so bad. But she's a kind old woman. So it makes his behavior worse. And you could ask, do you think she's old or young? If they don't get it, do you think she's old or young? You could ask them even. Or do you think she's young? And they might say, no, she's probably old, maybe. And then personalization. How would you personalize it? What question would you ask? A personalization question.
Do you often talk to your elderly grandma?
Talk to your elderly grandparents. Or maybe first, yeah, maybe first you could say, are your grandparents elderly? Some grandparents are very young. I know of people who are grandparents in their like early 20s. Maybe not early 20s, no, maybe late 20s, quite young. They have children young and their children have children young. So not all grandparents are elderly, but you could ask them, are your grandparents elderly? How old are they? Yeah.
If students can answer personalization questions, does that means they understand this word?
You have to check understanding. How would you check understanding?
I think
maybe if they answered no, they're quite young. Student answer no, they're quite young. Or yes, they're really old. They're really old. They're in their 90s. That shows you, just checked. From that, you know that they understand.
90s means they understand elderly.
Yeah, or they're in their 60s, for young people, 60s old, 70s, whatever. Yeah, you could show them pictures and say which one is elderly.
Yeah.
Yeah, as a check. So as a check understanding, show photos, ask them which one they think the woman looks most like. Yeah. Ask them which one is it. Ask them which one is elderly. Show one that's old and the rest are young, or maybe show two that are very old and the rest very young, and ask them to identify those who are elderly. You're checking the understanding. So yeah, eliciting the meaning in the context. Try and use the context. Use the sound of the words. Ask, what does it sound like? What's it similar to? Guessing, very, very important. Also, perhaps if they read on a little bit, sometimes the meaning is explained in the text, so they just have to read on a little bit. With elderly, it's not, but with many words, there's a synonym, or, you know, the word is explained later from the context. People can understand it. And also personalization, very important, to help them to identify with the word, and also the grammar, to identify with it, to internalize it so that they remember, and check their understanding. Some questions make it clear that they understand, but sometimes they may not. Actually, the answers might have different interpretations, so you can just check their understanding to make sure that they did understand it. If you really want them to learn that word and remember it for a test. But in general, for reading, encourage them not to feel that they have to understand everything, that they should enjoy the reading and guess. Guessing is very, very, very important in language in general. And yeah, very important in understanding vocabulary. Guessing from context, guessing from their own experience. Like perhaps some of them deliver papers in their community. Where do they deliver them? In the area where they live. So they can guess from their own experience, guess from the text itself. Okay.
Okay.
I hope that's been helpful. I think this is our last lesson, this block. If you want any more, let me know. This is the fourth, isn't it? Yeah, I think so. So I think you've got quite a lot to go on with, work with. You can try out the different texts in the different textbooks and just keep practicing. And the important thing with the diagrams and the text analysis approach is to discuss with your students, to have their viewpoints, because it's not just one viewpoint. Like sometimes there are different views, so you can discuss with them and have them tell you what they think, and then you guide them, show them, because there is also a kind of definite basic structure with background, the focus, and then the hierarchical development and it coming together. That's basic. And also the idea of problem and solution. And this was a narrative text, so that's a bit different than an academic one, a more informal one. Like it's got a narrative structure, and sometimes it's just one character story, but here there was one story, one basic story, but there were two main characters. So the development of the action was from two different characters, and these interacted with each other to come to the revelation at the end for the boy. And I think it's interesting how in that text the title is very important, but the word lesson and the word forgiveness didn't appear. Lesson didn't appear at all, did it? Not, and forgiveness didn't appear in the whole text, except at the end, oh, forgiveness. No. Did they actually use the word forgiveness at all? I don't think he did he? Oh, she had forgiven me. Yeah. Forgiven me. just at the very end. So they didn't have this. Of course, you've got end weight here. So that's important. What comes at the end is important. I don't know what's happened there. What's that? All right. I'll leave that. So you've got end weight here, but it's only mentioned at the very, very end. In a more academic text, you would have much more cohesion right through. And here, the word lesson isn't mentioned, but it's implied. And the lesson comes really from the text. And it's at the very end with the realization and after the realization.
Yeah.
Yeah. So best of luck. When is your interview?
Sorry, I didn't hear your question. Sorry, I didn't hear your question.
When is your next interview?
Next interview. I have to wait the school or government. They will put the information on the internet. I have to check and wait.
Right.
Yes.
It might be next month.
I don't know exactly date. Right.
But possibly next month or so. Yeah. Okay, well, best of luck with it. Yeah, I hope this has been helpful, and you just have to present it in a clear and simple way. So maybe simplify what you know. Teachers always know much more than they present, and they build the kind of scaffold things. They build, they teach the students as much as they can cope with at one time, and then each time they kind of expose the students to more and more of it. So you have to judge how much to teach your students at each point. But from the beginning, I think we should have the idea of the overall structure, because this gives them confidence. It gives them a tool to understand from the kind of top down. And that's very important, because many students start reading from the bottom up, one word, the next word, and sentence, 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 sentence. And the teaching approach that in many places that is very traditional, and it emphasizes sentence level. So students are stuck at sentence level and stuck at sentence grammar and stuck with vocabulary, instead of getting an overview of the whole structure so that they can understand the overall meaning of the text. Right?
Yeah.
So I think you've got a problem, because I think in Taiwan, from what I've seen from the textbook, I think they're quite traditional. So you have to present this in a way that your students can understand, and also that your interviewers can understand as well. Okay.
Yeah.
Do you feel quite confident?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
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 Yes.
Yes. Good. Good. You've got all the basics. I've taught you all the basics. I've taught you all the kind of basic principles. But each text is different, and you have to work with each text, because meaning only happens in the specific context, right? But the basic principles are the same. Okay. So I have to go now. I've got quite a lot to do. Hang on. Yeah, I was expecting a call. Best of luck. Okay. In touch and let me know how you get on with it. Okay. Thank you very much.
Okay.
I'll send you this as soon as I get it. I hope it doesn't take as long as last time. Okay, I'll send you the video. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.